Calling the roll, Mr. Strawn.
Here?
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Hauser is absent at the moment. Ms. Baker. Here. Ms. Simon. Here. We have a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Council Member Miller is also in attendance.
Okay. And is there any public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
All right. We had minutes from an October 29th meeting, even though this was not a meeting today that was necessarily scheduled. It was scheduled, but we didn't have a long-term plan, so might as well wipe out the minutes from the October 29th meeting. Everybody a chance to read them? The chair will move for approval of the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any discussion regarding the October 29th? Hearing none, all in favor of the approval of the minutes from October 29th, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. We have no matters that have technically been referred to the committee. However, there are two matters that have been brought forth that we wanted to have a public hearing in regards to the content. I'm going to take the second item regarding the church and state mixed-use project first. And is there anyone here in regards to this conversation of what the background is in regards to it from the administration? I assume, Mr. Huth, you're going to first tee this up. Please turn the mic on and put your name on the record.
Sorry, it's, no.
That's all right.
Greg Huth with the county's development department. I do want to thank you, Chairman, and the rest of the committee for agreeing to get together on this on short notice. This is a deal that was first approved several months ago, where we came in initially with a 25-year loan to make to this project. After some conversations during our first committee meeting, we scaled that back to a 15-year, 2% loan that we were getting ready to close just last week so that they could get this project started. We learned early last week that the HUD lending, it's one of the restrictions in that HUD lending is that, okay, yeah, you've got a 15-year loan, but gee, if something goes wrong during that 15 years, the HUD restrictions said that we couldn't go after our one borrower that was named in our resolution for the length of their loan, the life of their loan.
For purposes of the folks who maybe are not as fresh on, refreshed on who that one borrower is, could you just please speak to that?
Sure, it was a LLC called Project 29 Partners LLC.
Okay, so that was who the county was intending to be on the hook as a primary in regards to it.
Correct.
Okay.
And then that is also the same borrower on the HUD loan.
Okay.
So with that restriction, we're saying, well, we don't have the authority to enter into an agreement with anybody else, just this one borrower. And with that restriction, we couldn't we call this a 15-year loan. So what the solution we've worked out here is that we'll add, one step back. There was that loan and there were 6 guarantors on that loan.
Personal guarantors, or are these, is this a corporation guaranteeing, or is this personal guarantees?
These are all personals.
Okay.
So what we've worked out with HUD and with the borrowers, take 3 of those guarantors and also name this as borrowers. So we have this whole list of 4 borrowers now that we can go after any one or all of them. But if it's still during that 40 years, which yes, it would be, we wouldn't have to go back after the borrower on the HUD loan. We could treat the others as borrowers in the event of a default during that 15-year term, because those 3 guarantors are not borrowers on the HUD loan. Yes, I heard you say earlier, this is angels dancing on the head of a pin. It's a bit of form over function, but after discussing this extensively with our lawyers, we felt it was just a little bit too far over the line when it comes to what we were authorized to do.
Okay, so we have 3 co-makers that are willing to add themselves in their co-maker status. Is that what I understand?
Correct.
And the other 3 personal guarantors are not going on as co-makers, is that?
Correct, but they will stay as guarantors.
Okay. And they have signed off thoroughly acknowledging that the 3 co-makers are actually taking a higher degree of risk to some degree than the 3 that are only on the personal guarantee. Is that correct?
That's the way we see it. We'll let Mr. Vesey speak to that as well.
Yeah, we're designating the managing members of the LLC as those 3 additional co-makers. So that's the rationale.
And obviously, nothing ever gets fuzzy until it gets fuzzy. And at that point in time, and you've got all the signatures from all six of them, everybody acknowledging that three are stepping into a different capacity here. Because I don't want the county getting in the middle of them,
Right.
although we used to have a term in the Army, but I won't use it here.
Our
Something to do with
feeling exactly.
cluster.
I think I know what you're saying. And
Yeah,
our
yeah.
feeling
Sorry about that. Any other questions from the council members on the committee to Mr. Huth as to what they are trying, the structure pieces are going to look like? We got, well, we have three, we actually have a quorum of lawyers up here too, don't we? Isn't that a scary
It's
concept?
dangerous, isn't it?
I know.
3 lawyers get you 4 answers, right?
Huh? Yeah, it is helpful, actually. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Miller? This is just for Mr. Huth at this point in time.
My question is whether there's any action required by the council in this regard, or whether it can be done
Yeah, Mr.
with
Chairman.
by the administration on informal approval from us.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not exactly sure I understand what informal approval is.
There is no,
We felt
Yeah.
that we did not have the authority to do this under the resolution. So to that point, we will be asking for an amendment to the resolution on the 27th as a first reading suspension passage, because
Okay, that's what my question was. Okay.
and as I think in a pre-conversation with Mr. Huth, I explained to him that this body, as a committee, does not have the authority to do anything at this moment in time. This will be completely within the discretion of our council president as to what he does in regards to this, working with the clerk, as to whether or not your request of first reading suspension at a meeting is something he wants to do. I can't speak for him.
Right.
I know that we are always in the interest of what's in the best interest of our community and projects of this nature, but that's going to be his call, 100%, working with the clerk out there, which means it either will come back to this committee if he wants to sign it, or if he wants to go through with a first reading suspension. Again, that's not something I can dictate out there, other than that. So that was the purpose of this, Mr. Miller, is to get a hearing and an airing ahead of time. I think we did it one time in one of your committees also.
We just did it recently.
Right, and so that was what we did there. Any other questions or comments from I assume, one of the 3 co-makers?
No, yeah, as I mentioned, we are not asking for anything additional from the county other than providing additional coverage for this loan. So we will, if Council President Brady allows us to go through with the meeting on the 27th, we could have men and women working on site on the 30th. We would close the 29th of this month.
Well, I mean, let's fast forward as to what takes place. If a resolution and an amendment comes through, and it gets passed at the next council meeting with first reading suspension, it still goes to the county executive, and the county executive has to take a written document and make sure it gets signed into law.
Yeah, we recognize that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I just want to make sure,
we've got all-
I just want to make sure that if he's got a construction crew there on the 30th in the morning, that he knows that there are some steps that still need to take place.
Yeah.
None of which are beyond that are in the control of this body.
Understood. Yeah.
Okay, is there anybody here from HUD?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one of HUD's counsel, Ray Kaiser, who works out of the Cleveland office in the Cleveland-Detroit district.
Okay, Mr. Kaiser, would you mind coming up and at least putting your name on the record, at least from that standpoint? And because we had some statements made that you're going to accept what was just being done, and I just want, or the HUD will accept it, and if you don't mind, I would appreciate putting that on the record.
My name's Ray Kaiser. I'm the chief counsel in the Cleveland HUD office. Unfortunately, and as much as I would like to speak on this matter, I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the department in any public meeting in this setting, so I can't really say anything other than HUD supports this obligation, and we are planning to close this loan towards the end of this month.
Okay, and you've heard what is anticipated to be done here. If everything is anticipated to be done, does it look like we'll have all the steps and procedures in place?
I'm leaving this room with few concerns in that regard.
Thank you. Spoken like a good lawyer. No, that was a lawyer speaking of that one. Any other questions in regards to anything? I noticed we have counsel here from the law firm that's been advising on this. Is there anything you'd like to at least make comment on as far as whether you feel we have any other oopses that maybe might take place?
Thank you. Irene MacDougall from the law firm of Walter Haverfield. No council members, I believe this is the final hurdle to get this project underway. We appreciate this the county's support, and hope to continue a wonderful relationship.
Okay, well, with that, the best I can do is recommend to the council president that he put this on for first reading suspension for next council meeting, but that cannot be done with any authority, nor can we take a vote, I don't believe, on it here.
Second. Is that a motion?
I don't think I can put it, we have our resident parliamentarian, is there, we could
I
put
think-
forward the supporting motion, couldn't we? Yes, okay. I'll move that we support that with an oral commitment to it, and it's been seconded. Any discussion regarding it? It's strictly, it has no legal effect other than a recommendation. Hearing none, all in favor? All in favor of the recommendation to go forward? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just put that on the record at least that we've gone to that step, and it's up to Mr. Brady, President Brady, to make any determination. Good luck. Make sure the gas tanks are filled on the 30th on your equipment. And thanks for coming. We have one other item that was going to receive a presentation. And this is also coming from the executive's office, I assume?
That's correct, sir. That's Mr. Chairman, Pat Smock, on behalf of the Department of Human Resources. HR submitted this item at the request of Economic Development, and obviously I'm joined by Greg Huth from Development. HR is prepared to respond to questions regarding the contracting process, and then we'll defer questions about the position requirements and duties and funding and the project timing and supervision to Greg and his colleagues. This is an expedited timeline. We were asked to meet with the entire project being completed by March 31st. So we judged that a full RFP process would be unrealistic. HR requested candidates based on a job description or position description that development supplied to us from the 6 temporary agencies that either have a contract with the county or are in process of contracting with the county. And development reviewed those responses and selected the main sale candidates as the best fit for their requirements. Excuse me, what we chose to do was to amend the current main sale contract, adding a separate Department of Development index code to be charged for the services. And upon going to the Board of Control, the members expressed some concern that that the original main sale contract is an ERP contract, and that we're adding an additional index code to that. That does happen quite often, and there's never been commingling of funds that I'm aware of. One side note is that this amendment is dated to end in September, which is the date of the original main sale contract. But as I mentioned, the project is scheduled by development to be completed by March 31st of 2019.
Okay. Was there a determination from legal that we need to actually do an amendment here at this point in time?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that item is before you. I think
I didn't think it was either.
This is
Okay.
more a matter of discussion, and depending on how you folks feel, whether it would just go back to BOC and let it be handled there, or whether then it should actually get bounced up to the council as an actual piece of legislation.
Okay, I don't read this body as the one that's supposed to be giving legal advice in regards to that, so we'll defer over, do we have legal counsel here? Or we'll let that determination be up to them. Our body is not, this body is not making its own legal determinations in regards to that at this point. We thought this was informational only.
It is. It is.
Okay.
It is. That was the intent, is just to be informational.
Okay, and then the other aspect of it is, I think this $120,000, does any of this relate to the fact that during the contracts provision, where we were reviewing the open contracts, that the directors had made a statement somewhat to the effect that there might be some additions or to perform this, but there was no reference to $120,000 in open session, I think is what this comes out to.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I went back and listened to the tape. And when we were talking about the different deadlines we're trying to hit, one being the end of this year, one being the end of the first quarter next year, there was, I'll admit, a very passing reference to the need, maybe a need for additional resources. These are those additional resources. It's about 120 grand that's coming out of money that was already approved for our department in our contract line. So it's not any additional money the department's asking for, but it's money that we'd already had assigned to us for purposes of contracting in general. So we were going to use it to fund this little piece of the mainsail contract.
Well, and I can't speak for the other members of this committee, but I can say that as chairman, if somebody says, "Oh, we might need some little additional resources," and it's a one-sentence throwaway line, when I'm talking about taxpayer money, $120,000 is something that I would have thought would have been appropriate to be mentioning out there, because as we just came out of Mr. Miller's committee, every $120,000 is going to be very near and dear to this county's taxpayers and going forward. So I would like to think that one sentence lines like that should get filled in with the fact that you're going to add one more full-time equivalent. I think functionally that would be at least as far as $120,000.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just on that point, I don't disagree with anything you just said, but I think at the time that we made that presentation here, we weren't really sure how we were going to handle this. So once this method kind of came together is when we really realized that we would need this additional cash from our contract line.
Yeah, the fact that it's in the budget, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be in the budget, as Mr. Miller is going to tell you, I assume as we go forward, some of which is not going to get funded in the future because of the difficulties we're going to have. Questions or comments from any of my colleagues? This is an informational piece. It started from the fact that at the last meeting, there was a reference that there might be some additional resources needed. It's only through this clarity do we now know that represents $120,000. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I guess coming from Board of Control, I was at the time surprised that any additional funding was going to be needed. And I too went back to the tape to see where it was that we thought additional funding. And I did see that passing comment that more resources. I guess the question is, we're now in November. One deadline ends next month. Then the final deadline ends 3 months after that. Do you anticipate that you are at a point now where you're going to be expending these funds over the next 4 months, with one of those months being with a holiday? Is $120,000? How did you come up with that amount of money to justify what else you need to do in finishing the project?
Mr. Chairman, the Councilman, we were estimating at the time the need for 3 temps for that 3 to 4 month period, and that's where the 120 came up from that. Now, at this point, I don't. It's possible that we would. It just depends on once we start getting further down, as we like to say, further into the onion, as we peel back the layers. Yeah. We may ultimately need all 3 of those people to get this done.
The staff that you have in place now, outside of the 3, so we're talking about 3 people that potentially. Okay, so I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. So outside of these 3 people, you don't believe that you can get this project finished at the end of the year or at the end of the first quarter without implementing these 3 people to finish the project? I thought at the last presentation we were there, I thought it was kind of like we need to wrap up, we'll be back, but we've overcome most of the obstacles that were accounted for, all the loans, everything is good. We just need a little more time to put the final stamp on. I didn't think I heard anything about needing 3 more people to help wrap up. Is that just something that happened after the meeting we had the last time with economic development?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the Councilman, yes. I mean, as I said earlier, as we dig into the onion, we see more of these kind of issues. And just want to be clear about a couple of things. There are two deadlines that we're getting done here. We're very confident we're going to meet the one for the end of this year, where we've gone through and inventoried everything in our paper files and in Portfolio. But what this role is to take everything, all those paper documents, and reconcile those to the terms that are entered in Portfolio. So this isn't simply going in and saying, yeah, we've got a loan agreement here, yeah, we've got a note here. We need the kind of accounting skills so somebody can read the note, read the other security documents and say, yes, that's properly entered in Portfolio, so we know we're billing everybody properly and have billed people properly. So that's a little bit more of a narrower niche, I guess, of a skill set that we need. And this has been going on for, what, 2-3 years now. We want to get it done. And we really think that we need these extra people, at least this next 3-4 months to do that.
Sure. Go ahead, Ms. Baker.
Can you give us maybe a better idea of what the cost would be if you're not sure? I mean, do you have your arms around what will it cost to wrap this up by the end of the first quarter of next year? If it's not 120,000, if you don't need 3 people, you must have a pretty good understanding of where you need to be based on where you are today. Is it that open-ended that 120,000 should cover it? Is kind of what we're hearing.
Yeah, no, I understand the question, Councilman, to the chairman of the councilman, and I don't want to, cut our own legs off, I guess, as it is. Every time we start digging into these things, and now we're getting into some of the real nitty-gritty, the real detail here, we realize that this is a little bit bigger than we thought it was. So I don't want to make that mistake again. So that's why we're asking for this dollar amount.
Simon?
Thank you. What if we don't allocate this 120? What would happen if you didn't get this additional funding?
My best guess is that we may have this wound up by the end of next year, the end of 2019. That's a guess.
So is this a matter of time or is this a matter of expertise? Because I just heard you say that we need part-time people to handle a technicality of inputting loan terms into the system. So I want to be clear about why we need people. Is it time or is it specialty?
Mr. Chairman and Councilman, it's actually both, and I want to be clear that the inputting that they're doing is correcting current information. So it's not inputting new information. It's reconciling the loan documents with what's already in Portfolio to make sure that whether it's the term of the loan, whether it's the interest rate, whether it's how the interest is to be charged, whether it's how the forgiveness is to be calculated. We have to be sure that all of those things are accurate in Portfolio. So it really is both time and expertise. Because
Isn't this an ongoing issue though, going forward to make sure things are correctly inputted and reconciled? I mean, I don't see this as a temporary issue to be rectified. This seems to be just part of the job of the loan portfolio manager, who I think we hired to oversee this and make sure it's done correctly and fixed.
Chairman, the councilman, the people we have in place now, we're certain that they have the skills to make sure we're doing this for everything going forward. But what we're trying to do is correct the several years, maybe a decade worth of entries in Portfolio that may not be accurate. Because remember, Portfolio is not just what we use to service loans day to day. Portfolio is our archive. This is all the loans that we've ever made. So there are some of those that we want to be sure are right. A lot of those we want to be sure that are right. So once we get over this hump, we won't need these folks, because by then we'll know that what we have, it'll be corrected. And then Brian and Sona, who are portfolio managers today, are doing that exact thing for all the new stuff that's coming along.
Okay, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but do we have the people on staff to do this without hiring new people?
To the councilman, not to get it done by the end of next.
Time, it's not a matter of specialty or ability.
As we've
It's
said.
just a matter of time. So this council can make a decision on time, not whether, we have the skill set to do this. So the question is, when would this get done? And you're telling me it's going to take an additional 12 months to make corrections to this
When you
end
com-
of 19?
when we combine this with the day-to-day activity that our portfolio managers have to deal with, phone calls and all sorts of other things like that, that's my best guess.
Okay, so if the worst case scenario is we don't allocate money and we have to wait an additional 12 months to make corrections, what's the timeline? I mean, what does this translate into in dollars and cents? I mean, is it gonna add up to 120? I mean, what's the difference if we have to wait 12 months for these corrections? I'm sure in the meantime, we still can seek collection of outstanding loans.
To the councilman, you can, but you certainly want to be sure that those things are accurate when you turn them over to the collections council. So that's one of the other things we'd have to be confirming. And this is a matter of, what do we really want our loan portfolio manager to be focusing on? We want to have him focused on the day-to-day of maintaining it. That's what we really need them to be focused on. So that's why we want to try and get this out of the way during this next quarter.
And so what would this money otherwise be used for? We're taking 120 away just to save some time and efficiencies, I guess, but what would this otherwise be used for?
This was money that was in our contract line that we didn't have expenses for this year.
I'm not sure that I support this.
Yeah, well, at this point in time, this is not, it's not even,
But
Yeah,
for the
no, I
record, I'm
get
not
it.
sure I support this, even though we don't have authority to
yes, it's only.
do anything with it.
Yes, Ms. Tuma?
Yeah, just a quick question. So with respect to the amount, so what would this go to? One individual, two individual? Who's this going to?
To the councilman, we base this on an estimate if we had 3 temps in for that 3-month period, up to 3 temps.
So three temps doing the work that can be done in-house. It's just for, like the councilwoman said, it's just about time, and I just don't understand why time can't be allocated to something like this. I'm trying to wrap my head around why we always have to go outside for, it seems like every issue that's out there.
Well, if I may, as this has been dragging on for 3 years now, and we're trying to get it finished. We need to get it finished. And this is what we felt was the best approach to having it finished by the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, no, I agree it needs to be finished. I just don't know at what cost. So I'm trying to do a balancing as to whether or not this is something that could actually be done in-house versus retaining outside people just at $120,000.
There's no question we could get it done in-house, it's not gonna happen in the first quarter of next year.
Okay.
Simon?
I would just suggest perhaps that, maybe one person, not 3. We're facing a debt. We just heard from finance about what we're facing in terms of, going forward with, deficit. And I understand you want to get it done, but I think you just need to figure it out. I don't have a say. And I'm perplexed because I feel like to some extent we were told this was an expertise issue. And when I drill down, it really is just time. So I'm disappointed in how that was presented. I don't know if you meant it, but I think what I heard you say was that you needed the technical, expertise to do this. And it's really just a matter of getting it done and what costs. So that's just my statement.
Well, if I may, I said it was both. It's time and expertise.
Well, first you said it was one, you said it was both, but it really isn't both. It's really time.
With the right expertise.
I'm not going to go back and forth, but we have the staff to do this, who have the expertise to do this. It's just a matter of how they're going to spend their
How
time.
quickly it can get done.
Yes, which I would have appreciated hearing that from the beginning and not having to ask questions about this.
And these are temps, or is that what I understand? So
we
temps
do
are interns, is that what I heard the word intern, I heard the word temps.
No, it'll be temps through the main sale contract.
Okay, so if I'm just using a temp number, because I know we do temps all the time, at $20 an hour, that's 6,000 hours. That's 150 weeks worth of man time. That's a lot.
I don't know.
If I just did the math, I think, maybe I'm missing, maybe my math is wrong, but
With the expertise that was required by the department, sorry, they quoted us at $38.42 an hour for these employees.
so double that. Okay, well, all right, so we're still 75 weeks. because I was using 20, so if you're using it 40,
When we began the process, sir, we did a 6-month, that was October, November, December, January, February, March. So 1,040 hours for 3 employees at $38.42 an hour, sir.
yeah, okay, so that's half a year, and we're gonna spend 120 in a month. Well, I think this body is saying, when you come back for your budgets, if this is how we're spending this money, be conscious that this body has long memories too, and in that respect. And we're just gonna be watching every one of these pennies from the county as we go forward. Yes, Ms. Simon?
Well, I thought once it's pulled from the Board of Control, it becomes under our authority as council to make decisions about it, that it doesn't stay with the Board of Control once it's pulled, that we can actually have some decision-making over
could.
this.
There's no reason that things of that nature couldn't get pulled and push forward.
It is pulled.
Yeah, this is informational to my know. Was it pulled?
So, Mr. Chair, Trevor Mackler, council staff.
Yep.
The council president, at his request, recommended this item get pulled to council with the understanding that you would have a discussion in committee and the committee can determine how to proceed. So if the committee was okay with it, it could be kicked back to Board of Control. If the committee wanted some additional questions, it would stay within council and consider legislation or however you wanted to proceed.
Well, I'll hear from my colleagues at this point in time, but we've got 2 members of the Board of Control that are here. Yes?
Couple of questions. If we do what's being proposed here, we have to pay the temps their rate, plus we have to pay Mainsail to round up the temps and administer their program. Could we do this for less if we just hired the people that we need temporarily ourselves rather than add to this contract?
Councilman, there was some discussion of regarding doing a temporary posting through the Department of Human Resources, and just based on the timeliness, we made this selection, but that's still in play if the council favors that.
And my other question is, I'm trying to get an understanding of what benefit we're going to get out of getting this done quickly. And I mean, are there things that if the director and the department don't have to focus on this, that they're going to be able to focus on, that's going to be worth $120,000 to us? And is it going to attract more jobs? Is it going to bring in more projects? Is it going to get more brownfield work done? Is there a benefit, and can you quantify it?
To the councilman, of the 3 things you named, specifically, no, because the people who are doing this work for us today don't get involved in those areas, although they are part of the loan closing process now, so they have to sit down when we're closing those loans to be sure things like this aren't coming up again in the future. But part of this review, for example, is going to be looking at things like UCCs, right? UCC filing statements. Everybody knows those expire. And you have to be sure that you don't let yours expire. You have to get yours refiled before it expires. So that's one of the things we have to be able to stay on top of. And that's why, again, we're trying to push to get things like this done so we don't lose that kind of collateral. And if we look at the way of collateral for any given loan, if something looks a little funky to us, we're going to go out and have a lien search done so we can see if it's what we thought we had to begin with. So it's things like that we want to be sure that we can jump on and get corrected quickly.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Baker?
I guess one final thought. I know that we're all, at least I know I am, pretty weary of this whole process. And then we hired, I believe, someone in your department, they got hired in addition to help do this, didn't we?
Yes, Councilwoman, that's correct. Brian's the loan portfolio manager. We took another one of our positions and made him an assistant to him to work on this. And we're actually finalizing an admin support staff that'll be shared between two different divisions within the department.
So, we have given some considerable resources. Also, Ernest & Young had a hand in this that we outsourced to try and get their arms around. So it's not that we haven't invested in this process of trying to figure out the very old loans, how many can we recoup versus the new. So the extra 120,000 to get us to the finish line I just find it hard to justify, especially since we have entered those resources. We've got it down to a month or two before this even ends, hopefully. And the people that have been hired are in place. And an extra couple of months, I'm not sure it would take you all the way to the end of next year. We won't really know that until the end of next year when you finally tell us that it's finished.
Or the end of the first quarter.
Or the, so, I mean, I hope that you hear the frustration
Absolutely.
as as part of this understanding of why this extra money is needed at this time, especially that considerable amount. If it was 20,000 or 30,000, but we're looking at 120,000, which is, as we tried to calculate, man hours that doesn't seem realistic. That's my.
Ms. Simon?
So I would be willing to look at one part-time person with a commitment, we would see progress by, midway next year. One part-time person at best. That's it. And I
What?
think we should keep it in council and consider making a decision on this.
Okay, Mr. Mackler, this was sent to us with the intent that we're either going to recommend back to the council president to keep it in council or send it back to the Board of Control. Is that? Because we again, this is not before this committee other than for our hearing purposes for information.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that would be the course of action you can take. Either recommend to keep it here, then what we would work with the administration is to have legislation on for first reading at the 27th council meeting, or if you wanted to kick it to the Board of Control, that is another option.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Could we kick it back to Board of Control with the recommendation that Councilman Simon just made? I don't even know if that's an option.
It certainly is, if that's something the committee wanted to do. They could recommend just going out, cutting it in a third.
Well, I think that you can hear it loud and clear that it's a balance between time and money, and at this point in time, no pun intended, that would just as soon, some of this stuff has been hanging around for 8-10 years. What's another 2 or 3 months? If it gets done this year, I would agree with Mrs. Simon. And let's start being good, frugal stewards of our council's money. Yes.
I would really, and I know that you've got your arms around this because you've been in the trenches for so long. It would be good to know, instead of, maybe having a part-time person, can you make it happen for the end of the second quarter or halfway through the year? Give us a real expectation, not if you give me 120,000 and I can hire 3 people, we'll get it. If you can really sharpen the pencil, tell us exactly what you need. What can we expect to have done by mid of next year? And, really propose something that we feel like that makes sense. Is that possible? I mean, I don't want to just add another person and then you're still 6 months from now say, well, that person just wasn't enough and we couldn't get it done.
Can I have time to think about that?
Tell you what, why don't, this body, I will take a recommendation that we move it back to the Board of Control with substantial reduction in the cost that's been indicated to us. We'll put the burden on you. We've got 2 members of the Board of Control that have heard this entire conversation. They now know the factual background behind it, and I trust their ability to hold your feet to the fire as much as, rather than tie up, this is a full council item out there. And so I will move that this go back to the Board of Control with a recommendation to the President of Council. And is there a second with it? It's been moved and seconded. It'll go back to Board of Control with substantial reduction in cost out there.
Okay.
All in favor of that? Again, just to reiterate for purposes, it will be recommended to go back to Board of Control.
If I may, Chair, being a Board of Control is coming back to us,
Pardon?
being it's coming back to us, if I may just say one, please make it, we're hearing substantial reduction, bring it back to Board of Control, which then Dale and I will be, please give us a very good rationale with a, maybe even monthly, how much you think you can get done each month, why this person or two people, or whatever you justify, and the price of what that's gonna cost, and how many hours, those type of things, so that we're not just throwing money at it. And, well, if I ask enough, like you said earlier, if I ask enough, I don't wanna come back again.
Right.
I'd rather you ask the right number than an inflated one or one that's not enough.
I appreciate that.
I think you tell real clearly, if you come in at a number much above a third of what you already asked for, it's probably not gonna get through Board of Control. I can't give them a number, but that'd be my guess. We've got yes, Mr. Miller? Before we vote?
Yes, I also think Ms. Simon's on the right track.
Well, not only is she on the right track, she actually seconded the motion to move it back to the Board of Control with a substantial reduction. I did not put a number on substantial. I used a lawyer word, so you can drive a truck through that. Sorry about that. I know. My lawyer colleague is looking at me funny. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
All right, thank you.
You didn't.
And again, thanks for pulling us together so quickly. Ted
Yeah,
had
well, I think that
another obligation.
what it does is at least it lets you know that we're supportive of the concept, not supportive of the money.
Got it.
Unfortunately or fortunately, you're gonna hear that, I think, on everything for the next 2 years, as you heard the numbers if you were here.
I didn't bother to listen to that one.
Of all the ones you should listen to, that's one of the ones, because it's gonna have an impact factor out there. Is there anything else to come before the committee? Hearing none, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.